Welcome to the show. James Swanwick here. How would you like to feel 10 to 20 years younger? Sleep better, have clearer skin, lose some weight. You don't skip your workouts. Your home life was always good, but now it's incredible. And you got more time. Sounds pretty good. Our guest today says that he created all of that as a result of being consistently alcohol-free. He went through our Project 90 program and process, which helps high achievers to get long-term power over their drinking habits. His name is Steve Wilt. He's 58, from Ohio, and Steve works at a major financial services firm managing 401ks and pension plans. He's got 2 adult children, one of whom is 22, the other is 20, and he joins us now. Steve, great to have you with us.
James, thanks for having me on your podcast. I'm excited about this.
Me too. Tell me a little bit about your life in general.
Well, I am, like most people, I'm a very busy guy. I've got a strong business in managing 401ks and pension plans. I am active in my community, do a lot of nonprofit work and fundraising. I love public speaking. I'm an active golfer and tennis player. And as you mentioned, I've been married 28 years, have a wonderful marriage, 2 kids that are not teenagers anymore, and have come out the other side, fortunately, and are doing both really well. And I would just say that I'm kind of a high energy person. Yeah.
Yeah. Congratulations on married 28 years. What's the secret to 28 years of marriage, Steve?
I told my wife when I met her that I was going to make all of her dreams come true. And I am trying to live up to that on a daily basis.
Does she think that you are? Does she feel like you've been making her dreams come true?
Yeah, she does actually. And she does the same for me. We just get along. We trust each other. We assume good in each other. And it's just been I'm just a really fortunate guy.
Amazing. So you're 58 as we're recording this. How long has your drinking career been up and running, except for the last while? Actually, how long have you been alcohol-free now as we're recording this?
6 months at this point, but I started my journey about 2 years ago.
Okay.
And to answer your initial question, I started drinking kind of right out of high school, at the end of high school. So I had about a 40-year drinking career.
40-year drinking career. Got it. Until, I guess, 6 months ago. You've been 6 months alcohol-free now, and you started this journey a couple of years ago. So when did you realize that your drinking habits were creating a challenge? Was it like in an earlier decade of life? Was it, only when you got to your 50s? Like, when did you start to go, maybe there's something going on here that's not so great?
That's a really good question. I think like a lot of, people, guys, when I was younger, I could drink and, always had the, we're going to play hurt. It's going to be fine. And like most people in your program, we're a relative high achiever. So I was able to do it all while I was drinking. And then really it was around when COVID hit that candidly my drinking picked up during that period of time, like it did for many Americans and people around the world. I had COVID pretty badly. And coming out of it, I didn't know if it was my age or if it was something that happened to me from that. But I found that just the same amount of drinking, or if I drank a lot, it really impacted me in a way that it hadn't, and that I was definitely not being my best self and not performing at a high level.
What were you drinking? What were your drinks of choice?
So I had a lot of variety in my drinking. I love a good red wine. I loved a good red wine. And vodka was my go-to. And I was bringing in a little whiskey at the end, which is a pretty popular trend, as you know.
Got it. Okay. And when you say you loved red wine and brought in whiskey, was that a result of you actually really savoring the taste of it? Do you think that cultural conditioning had you really pick that up in an earlier decade of life, for example? Were there people in your life that were like, oh, let's share a beautiful bottle of wine? Like, what was the reason that you loved it so much?
So, yeah, drinking was modeled for me at a very young age, and it was always celebrated. I got into Reds, somewhere within my business career, and it was pretty popular back in the 90s. And it is now today, but that's kind of when I started drinking red wine. But what I've learned through this program, is people go through different iterations trying to get that same buzz. And I'm sure we'll talk about that and dopamine and the addictive natures of alcohol. But so many people start with beer and then they go to wine, then they go to mixed drinks, then they start leaving out the mixer and going to straight drinks, and then eventually to bourbon, all chasing that same dopamine rush and that same buzz. So it's almost like you graduate to the harder stuff as you go along without even realizing why you're doing it. You think you're just having something that tastes better or you're savoring it, but it really just starts to build on itself.
Yeah, and I would imagine in your industry, there's probably a lot of networking, clients, happy hours, golf tournaments, charity. I'm not sure. Like, is alcohol part of your industry?
Not only is it part of my industry, it's part of my life. I went 14 days in a row last summer being offered a drink. And that is between, all the networking events, nonprofit events, go to a basketball game with a Loge, after golf, after tennis, right? It's just kind of omnipresent in my world, which is, I think, why it became more of a challenge for me over time, is that it wasn't like I was just home choosing whether to drink or not. Every day, somebody's offered me a drink for long stretches, especially in the summer or during the holidays, where it really starts to pick up.
And when you say in the summer or the holidays, does that mean that it's outside? Is it at a barbecue or an outdoor event on a boat? Like, what are some of those examples of where you're offered that?
In the summer, there's just, I play a lot of golf, and it's very customary for guys to have a drink on or after golf. Like I mentioned, I play a lot of tennis, and most, groups have a drink after tennis. Or if I go to a barbecue, a party, an event of some kind, family events, like you just get together more during those periods of time, I think. And kind of unfortunately, I think most get-togethers revolve around alcohol.
Pre-COVID, because you said that your drinking increased during COVID, but pre-COVID, those years pre-COVID, did anyone ever say anything to you about your drinking habits? Did your wife of 28 years say anything? Did your children, did colleagues, did friends, did anyone ever mention anything at all about Steve and his drinking habits?
The only person that ever said anything to me ever was my wife. If I would have a big night out with the guys and, wake up the next day and not be productive, or, come home in a state that was not a good state. But no one else ever said anything to me, or I don't think anybody ever noticed that maybe I wasn't performing at my best.
And when you say you didn't feel like you were performing at your best, what do you mean? Could you elaborate on that? Like, what did you sense pre-COVID about your performance?
Yeah, so, pre-COVID and most of my life, I was able to balance the two. And I was smart enough and good enough to, not drink before a big day the next day, or before finals, or before, meeting with clients, and really to balance that out. And then, during the downtimes or in any of the events we just talked about, or vacations or whatever, it would pick up. So I felt like I was, able to kind of do both, even though there was too much alcohol in my life during that period of time. I was still able to kind of manage it, if you will, and run with it without it impacting my daily life. However, I'll digress here for a minute. I'm reading a book right now called Discipline is Destiny. And they talk about Babe Ruth and how he was the greatest player of all time. But he was a huge drinker and he was gluttonous. And what could Babe Ruth have been if he didn't drink? Right. And not that I'm comparing myself to Babe Ruth in any way, but I'm just reading this book right now. And it's just really at home with me when you think about being your best self or performing at your highest level. Is there anything holding you back? And I think this was holding me back from really performing at my very highest level on all walks of life.
It's interesting you say that. To use another golf story or analogy, if you like, I saw a video on social media recently that had an interview with Tiger Woods explaining his daily routine, which is he gets up in the morning, he runs 4 miles, he comes back, goes to the gym, lifts, has some food, goes out, hits 2 to 3 hours of balls, comes back, has a meal, goes out and plays a round, comes back, goes for another 4-mile run, and then if he feels like it, then he will play tennis or basketball. And then they cut to an interview with John Daly, John Daly, obviously a very famous golfer. I think he won the British Open once. Right. Very overweight, blonde mullet, smokes a pack of cigarettes a day, drinks beer, and an interviewer asked him, how do you prepare? And he goes, I wake up, I might have 3 or 4 cigarettes. I'll hit some balls for 20 minutes, drink 3 Diet Cokes, and then I'll go out and play them around. I was like, okay. And so it's like, it's funny because Tiger Woods, all that preparation, obviously he won, I don't know how many, I've forgotten how many majors he's won, but John Daly won 1. We laugh at John Daly, but the difference in performance is obvious, I think, to everyone, right?
Absolutely. And it's a great analogy in that, when John Daly hit the scene in 91, I happen to know a little bit about golf. He was the longest hitter. And we were all amazed by how far he could hit a golf ball. So to your point, if he had lived a more disciplined life and didn't have alcohol in it, what could that have career been? Yeah, it clearly would have been a stronger career for him.
So COVID came around and you were drinking more. What happened? Like, what was the turning point, the striking point, the moment where you said, got to do something here? So
there was a couple things that happened. The first one was our mutual friend, Dominic Cortuccio. Dominic, I'm in a group called The Great Man Within. It's a mastermind. And Dominic had us go through what's called the Great Man Meditation. And during that meditation in May of 20, I got really deep into it. Like I was really right in the middle of this. And you come face to face with a great man. And for me, my great man was in better shape, brighter eyes, which you'll hear me talk about, and just like a better version of me. And at the end of that meditation, Dominic has your great man say one thing to you. And my great man said, "You'll never be me unless you quit alcohol." And like it just was a crazy kind of almost spiritual thing that happened there. And I didn't right away. But throughout the stress of COVID, all that was happening to everyone, we had some major other stresses as well. Come March of 21, about whatever that is, 10 months later, I woke up one day and said, "This is getting the best of me. I need to do something." And I joined another program that was a program was about really using your willpower to not drink. And you could choose control or abstinence. And I chose control, meaning I was going to take an extended break, which was a term I like to use, and then probably drink again someday, which is what happened.
How long was your extended break?
I went 8 months during that period of time. I thought I was going to go 90 days. I got to the end of 90 days and I felt so good. And things were going well. And my golf game got a lot better. My tennis game got better. All kinds of things were just improving for me. And then, coming into the holidays later that year, I decided, all right, I broke the cycle. I am going to exercise control and I'm going to drink moderately, which I successfully did for a period of time. And then the amount that I was drinking between drinks, a number of days got shorter and shorter and shorter. And the next thing I know, I was drinking more often again. And, James Clear in Atomic Habits says it really well that, making one big decision is much easier than making the same decision every day. So during that 8 months, when I said, "Hey, I'm not going to drink," my mind was clear. My energy was there. But then when I decided to moderate, like every day I had to decide, am I going to drink or not? And it became very burdensome and heavy on me. And so then I'll just share it real quick. I took another extended break. And then last summer decided to reintroduce alcohol again, had the same result. And that's when I called you. So I have 2 case studies in there to prove to me that I'm better without alcohol than I am with it.
Yeah. How long was the time from when you took drinking up again until you realized it's actually right back at either the same level of drinking that inspired you to stop or worse?
Yeah. So the first time was about 4 months. And then I never got back to where I was or worse, but I could see that line approaching. And then the second time was about 6 months. And I went a pretty long period of time where I was really successfully moderating. And then it started to pick up speed again. And again, those daily offers started to happen. And, I came out of summer thinking, I've got to make a decision here. Like either I'm going, because again, I chose control both times. I never said I was going to quit forever. And I decided that I had to dig in, do my homework, make a decision on whether or not I was going to drink or not drink. But I couldn't live on this fine line of moderation.
Yeah. Now, you must have been thinking that because moderation didn't feel good for you. So I'm curious, what was so appealing about drinking that sent you back to it? And then what was so unappealing about it that brought you to me and our organization?
Well, I think what was so appealing is, kind of all those years of it being in my lifestyle, being part of the fun, being part of the party. I've got, multiple bars in my house. And it was just kind of part of my identity, if you will. And that's something I really struggled with the first time around. I actually had a therapist that I've worked with over the years that I work with around, how am I going to tell people? What are people going to think? How's this going to impact my identity? If I'm not kind of leading the charge or one of the guys in the party, who am I? And it was really heavy on me the first time that I decided to stop drinking. But what was so appealing during those times when I wasn't was all the things you mentioned at the beginning of the podcast. Sleep is the number one, maybe not number one, but it's really high up there. I sleep incredibly well. Guys of my age at 58 battle for sleep. I had a friend tell me one time he'd cut off his left arm for a good night's sleep. And I didn't tell him because I'm not in the business of, promoting. But I just thought, all I got to do is stop drinking and it'll pick, your sleep will get better. My energy, the amount of time that I have, you mentioned, if you're not drinking in the evenings, then you have more time for reading, family time, whatever you want to do. You wake up brighter and feeling better. For me, I don't skip workouts anymore. I used to go to workouts to kind of sweat out the drinking. Now I go for real gains. Right now I go to make a difference. As I mentioned, my handicap dropped in golf. All these things. And my wife, she just really appreciates that I'm now, on the weekends, I'm helping clean the garage. This is a small thing, but for 26 years, she made the coffee and got it every morning. For the last 2 years, I make the coffee and I get it every morning. And because I'm up early and I'm ready to go. So while it might seem like a small thing, I think it's a big thing to her, but it's not the biggest thing by far. It's just that I'm healthier, I'm more attentive, I help out more. It's just, I just feel better too. So I think I'm actually happier, although I've always been a happy guy. I just have more great energy. And I mentioned earlier being bright-eyed. That was always something that I saw people, and I never felt like I was a bright-eyed guy. But now I actually have people say to me, people that I haven't seen in a long time, that I haven't changed or that I look good or that there's something different about you that don't know about this journey. And I can't lie. It does feel good for people to recognize that, even though they don't know why.
And you don't tell them why?
Oh, I do. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm doing this podcast. I share my story. But again, I want to be really careful about it. I'm not trying to get anybody or make anybody feel badly. But I am a leader in my life. And I do believe that I'm onto something here that could benefit other people. So I want to gently let them know about it. And then if they lean in, ask questions, want to go to breakfast, which I've done with many people now, then I'm really happy to share the story. But I don't want to be that guy that, hey, I quit drinking and you need to too. That's not what I'm about. But I am here to help anyone that wants to have that conversation.
So you've described how you feel being alcohol-free consistently.
Mm-hmm.
You felt that way during those 2 times,
right,
before you went back to drinking. So what was the reason in hindsight that you feel you went back to drinking despite you feeling what you just described for those, I think it was 8 months at a time, I think roughly.
Yeah. It was 8 and 4.
Mm.
The reason that I went back was that I thought I could control it. But what I've learned through Project 90 and what I believe is that control is a myth for many people. And, addictions in my family. I've literally been medically tested. It's part of my DNA. So it's a losing battle for me to try and manage an addictive substance. What I learned in Project 90, and you can speak much better to this than I can, I didn't really realize how highly addictive alcohol was. I didn't realize that that first sip releases dopamine, which is the happy chemical, which is why you always want more. And that's part of the addictive nature. I didn't realize that you're chasing that buzz with more and more alcohol throughout the night, throughout the weeks, months, and years. I didn't know all that it changed your neural pathways and literally how your brain works, that it had that kind of an impact. I didn't know that it's a highly toxic poison that contains ethanol, which we put in gasoline. I just didn't know all that. But looking back, it sure makes sense that if you're hungover, there's a reason you're hungover, and it's because you're digesting poison through alcohol. And in your program, James, we signed up for 90 days. It was day 45 for me that it all kind of clicked, that I realized all those things that I just mentioned, that I realized that it was modeled for me all those years, that I realized that the alcohol companies glamorize it, that it's glamorized on TV and in movies. And I got really angry on that evening. It was after one of our P90 classes with one of your great coaches. And it took me a while to come down. And I don't get angry that often, but I got really angry that, and I'm responsible for my own actions, but this was happening to me all these years. I didn't know it. And it was on that night that I finally decided that I was never going to drink again.
I remember you sharing something similar in the days after that. I remember at the time you said that you've had something switch in your brain, like a light switch went off or went on, whichever is more appropriate. And you'd felt like you'd turned the corner. And that was a profound moment in your life, wasn't it?
It was one of the biggest moments of my life. Yeah. I mean, choosing to eliminate alcohol, a toxic substance, from my life has made me kind of the man I always wanted to be. Right? It's allowed me to just have a clearer vision with more energy, more time to give back more to my community, family, those I care about. And it's eliminated something that I think many people struggle with. So you can be a real high achiever, really successful, killing it on all outward levels. But if you're having a challenge with alcohol, there's a little bit of imposter syndrome in there. You feel like you're in a little bit of a prison that other people don't know about, especially when it gets to its worst. Like, I didn't feel that way for a long time, but then I started to feel that way. Like I was doing something negative that other people didn't know about, even those closest to me. One of our P90 graduates that I was in P90 with, Jordan, described it as the Matrix. Like in the Matrix, if you haven't seen the movie, Neo takes the blue pill. And when you do that, all of a sudden you can see the rest of the world for what it is. And it's like you're stepping out of this myth that is out there around alcohol. And now you can see what it does to you and to others that you care about. So yeah, it was a huge moment in my life.
When you said you were angry, what were you angry at, or who were you angry with? Maybe just elaborate on that.
I was angry at some members of my family, as it was modeled for me growing up and celebrated. And I mean, they didn't know any better either, right? I mean, back in the 60s, 70s, like my dad didn't know that his drinking was all these things I just listed. And he was a great man, but he drank a lot and he was a happy guy. But I watched him do it all those years and thought that's what guys did. So at that moment, I'm not angry with him now, but at that moment, I was angry at that. I was angry that there's this secret out there around how addictive this substance is that's never talked about, right? Like, people know that heroin and cocaine and opioids are addictive, but no one talks about the fact that alcohol is, that over time, there's a really good chance it's going to get the best of you. You might dodge it for a long, long time, but every time you take a drink, it's impacting your brain, your neural pathways, the dopamine's releasing, and the odds that it's going to get you at some point are coming. And then I was angry at just how we glamorize it throughout all of society. That week, I had watched an episode of this show, White Lotus, which is really popular, got a bunch of awards. And I went back and watched it. And literally in every scene, there was alcohol. It's this glamorous show and, the coast of Italy. And in every single scene, there was alcohol because that's what they're selling, right?
Yeah, you see it in so many films and TV series still to this day. It's crazy to me. When you're watching, I mean, if you're not aware, kind of like if you're in the Matrix, so to speak, and you haven't taken the blue pill, you'd just watch a TV series, you'd watch a movie, and you wouldn't notice how much alcohol is there. But when you've taken the blue pill and you're noticing, it's astounding how prevalent it is in these TV shows and movies, and also astounding how the storyline glorifies the person drinking the alcohol. There was a show that was on a decade ago, Mad Men, on AMC, and that was set in an earlier time. That was set in the 50s, 60s, late 60s. I don't think they quite got to the 70s, but they had scotch and whiskey in their office. They're drinking they're taking shots for breakfast, lunch, dinner. It's in every scene. And then fast forward today, I did watch White Lotus. It's a great TV series. Mm-hmm. You're right. Everyone, they're out at this fancy kind of resort, and it's all centered around drinks and having drinks. And then the storylines about people who drink too much, the storylines about the people who are drinking to relieve them of their stress, people who are drinking because they think that means that they're relaxed in this glamorous location. The other thing is, you don't strike me as the kind of man who spends hours and hours on social media. But if you did, Steve, you would see thousands and thousands and thousands of people's images, photos, with a prop in their hand. And that prop is always either a beer or a glass of wine or some champagne. It's like you cannot take a photo with a sunset or in this glamorous, location, you're on vacation, wherever you are, without having this prop of attractively packaged poison in the frame. It's almost like there's this unconscious belief that if you don't have the alcohol, then you're not appropriately demonstrating that you're having a great time.
Hey, yes. I don't spend a lot of time on social media, but I do spend some. And it just hit me the other day so my feed is a decent amount of motivational stuff and leaders. But I also get in there all these alcohol jokes that people make and what you're talking about. But then I also get in there and all these famous people that have chosen sobriety, and then they tell them their stories. But I found it really odd the other day. I was looking at it, like, you'd see one joke or one thing glamorizing alcohol, and then the next one would be, Ben Affleck or Brad Pitt or, another, very person sharing their journey and why they chose to be alcohol free and how it was going to ruin their lives if they didn't.
Mm. Hey, James here. Just a short interruption to share with you some of the results that folks have been getting inside of our 90-day stop drinking process. This is Jessica Gaines-Jarbo from Kentucky. She says, I've now got joy, focus, presence, clarity. This is Glenn Granger from Massachusetts. I'm more patient. This is Jenny Unglis from Northern Ireland. I discovered strength I didn't know I had. This is Doug Rice from Texas. I have unbelievable clarity. This is George Bird from New York. I'm calmer. And this is Russell Belcher from Australia. My health has improved. I've lost 20 pounds, says John Keltner in California. If you would like to create these type of results, then you are welcome to apply to be part of our 90-day stop drinking process, which is called Project 90. The link is in the show notes. You can go to alcoholfreelifestyle.com/Project 90. Back to the show. Let's talk a little bit about the benefits that you got. I mentioned at the top of the show here that you feel 10 to 20 years younger, sleep better, clearer skin, lost weight, not skipping workouts, home life, better, more time. So feeling 10 to 20 years younger, tell me about that.
It's just like, everything seems to improve. And again, I didn't get this for a long time, but like the whole body composition, hair, nails, skin, all just seems to be healthier. And my energy level is higher. I don't have some aches and pains that I was starting to get. So, I look at alcohol, forever man has been searching for the fountain of youth. And I think the fountain of youth is what you don't put in your chalice. It's not drinking, right? I mean, it's that easy to feel younger if you eliminate it from your life. And the other benefits that come along with that, though, for most people that are in Project 90 and beyond 90, is that most of us are spending more time in the gym or walking or doing other healthy habits. It all starts to build on itself. So that's definitely part of it, too. I think if you just quit, you'll definitely feel better for sure, especially if you're drinking a decent amount. But then when you start to add those other things to it, which are easy to start to add because now all of a sudden you're feeling better. Or for example, if you're not drinking, then you don't have chips at night or ice cream as much, or like your guard's not down and you don't want to waste the work that you've put in. So it starts to build on itself and all those things start to combine to make you just feel great. Like I really, coming out of COVID, I really thought that I might, have long COVID. I still have a little taste and smell issues, so I don't know what I have long term. But what I do know is I felt like I might never feel great again. And that lasted for a long time for me. And it was really upsetting.
Mm-hmm.
But now I actually feel great. Like I just, so having this kind of energy, at 58 feels really, really good.
When you say you don't skip workouts and more than that, you're working out to get gains, what transformation have you been making and are still making in your body?
Yeah. So, so I have a trainer. I actually just started a 6-week boot camp today, which is a slash nutrition, 6 weeks of working out, have my body mass and all that measured, which I've never done. But yeah, my clothes fit better. I'm just in better physical shape. My suits feel great every day. So, all that's combined into, just a little less. I never had a lot of weight, but I weigh less. And I can feel my body just transforming and again, it's showing up in my activities. When I play tennis on Saturday morning at 9 a.m., again, if I was out on Friday, I might be just showing up, putting in that 2 hours, sweating it out and not playing that great. Now by 9 a.m., I've been up for an hour and a half. I've stretched, I've had coffee, I've had my smoothie, and I'm down there ready to fire. And it's really fun playing really good, alert tennis at that time versus just struggling to get through it. Same thing on the golf course. I mean, play on the weekends. You're out at a big party the night before. You show up for your tee time. You don't hit balls. You get to the first tee. You're a little groggy. You jack one in the woods. Or I show up again with kind of an hour and a half under my belt of stretching and coffee and meditation and hit the range and and so my scores are coming down. Like it doesn't, again, it's just so clear now that it's why it's working in just those two examples.
Side story, I remember I was in Bali, Indonesia during the pandemic for a time, and the gentleman who actually does our paid advertising for Alcohol-Free Lifestyle and Project 90, he's a younger guy, late 20s, but he and I turned up to play tennis one morning. It was either a Saturday or a Sunday morning, I don't recall which. And, I haven't drunk in 13 years, and I turned up and we had the court scheduled for 9 a.m. He turned up looking like death and said, "Oh, geez, I had a bit of a tough night last night." I'm like, "Oh, okay. Anyway, let's go play." Then he had a tough match as I knocked him over in two sets, which were pretty easy. And when we got off the court and we were having a coconut each to recover at the end, I was sitting there. He actually had his head in his hands, in his knees. And he said, "I got to go to the bathroom." And he went off to the bathroom and he threw up and he came back and he was just a mess. I mean, that is what poison does to the body. I mean, even though he sweat a lot of it out in those 2 sets that we played, it just became too much for him. I mean, he's a young guy, right? Like late 20s. Imagine being in your 40s and 50s, late 30s, 40s, 50s, and going out and drinking and that happening. I mean, that's I couldn't quite smell the booze on him, but I looked at him and just thought, wow, that is a man who is broken. He is broken from drinking attractively packaged poison.
Yeah, man, it's brutal, right? To see that now. And it's kind of weird that I see it, and you mentioned smelling it. Like I can smell whiskey, when I'm talking to somebody at an event, and it doesn't smell good. We talk about this in Project 90. Like the first time that you drank wine or beer or something, did it taste good? And the answer is no. None of us liked it on the first sip. We condition ourselves to like it or think we like it. And now that I'm, this far away from it, when I smell it, it does not smell good anymore.
Mm.
It actually smells like gasoline or something, they call it fire water for a reason, right? It's got that chemical strength to it. Yeah. I did want to touch on one other thing here, James, that I think, when I started, I was so worried about missing out on the fun. And I think people think that all the time. And it's actually been the opposite for me. I actually go out more with some of my friends that I was kind of not going out with as much because I didn't want to have a big night of drinking. And, now I'm the driver. I didn't get behind a wheel having a drink for 20 years. But now I can be the designated driver, which is kind of fun. And I'm just more engaged throughout the night. And I used to worry I wouldn't be as funny. And I'm wittier, right? Because my senses are with me. So I don't feel like I'm missing out on any of the fun. I'm having just as much fun, if not more. There isn't every now and then I'll be at something where everybody's getting hammered and I'll just leave a little early, but I think a lot of people I know, I was afraid of that. I was afraid that I'd lose friends or people wouldn't want to be around me. But it's just not the case. I still have all my friends and good friends, and we still have a great time together. And I just feel good at the end of the night and importantly, the next morning too.
Mm. And you said that your home life with your wife was always good, but now it's better. Would you elaborate on that?
Yeah, it goes back to what I said earlier, everything from, getting the coffee to helping clean the garage, to just being more energetic or, especially on the weekends, my wife says, hey, can we go do this? And I'm like, sure, let's go. Like I got the energy and I got the time and, and I have more time for everyone, right? But especially for my wife and kids. So it's hard to put my finger on it, but I can tell you that we are really happier now than we've ever been. And it's always been good. But there's only one thing that's changed to make it better. And it's me not drinking.
Mm. Congratulations. Amazing to hear that.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you.
As we head for home here, so to speak, what was it that you felt you learned specifically in the Project 90 process that we have here at Alcohol Free Lifestyle that maybe you didn't learn in either the previous program that you did or through trying to stop on your own for some time, or any book that you read or podcasts that you listened to, or someone's motivational feed in an Instagram feed that you saw? What was it specifically about Project 90 that you felt helped create the breakthrough this time?
Yeah. So, well, first of all, I thought I wanted to share our first conversation around this. And then it was September 25th last year. And, I did reach out to you from our mutual friend, Dominic, and wanted to learn more. And you encouraged me to sign up that day. And my comment to you was, well, I'm going on a golf trip and it's the holidays. This is a bad time. And I don't know if you remember this, but your comment back to me was, or is it the best time, Steve? If you don't sign up, how are you going to feel 90 days from now coming out of the holidays compared to if you do? And that hit me square between the eyes. And I signed up on September 26th and, haven't had a drink since. But it was a really poignant point to me because I've come out of the holidays and all the partying, not feeling good. This time I felt great on December 26th. But what I learned, I mentioned a little bit earlier, and, the coaches in Project 90, first of all, Victoria and Sarah, they're licensed, therapists that have educations, on this topic. So that's really different than what I've seen out there in the marketplace around programs. The community is incredible. And not only throughout Project 90, but beyond. Having a group of alcohol-free friends and beyond 90 and others is so, I think, meaningful to me to continue the journey and to continue to strengthen the journey. But for me, what I really learned was, again, the pieces around dopamine, how addictive it is, what it does to our bodies. And, in those classes, I immersed myself. I decided I'm either going to make this decision or not. So I think there's 4 Project 90 calls a week. They're 90 minutes each. I made almost every one during that period of time. I posted in our social media post called Polo quite often what I learned. I was listening. So I really just wanted to make sure that I took this seriously and decided one way or another, once and for all, what I'm going to do with this substance. So all those things we've talked about were impactful for me. I think there's other things that you learn in the program but for me, the science really hit home. And that was a big difference maker. And again, part of the reason that I made the decision to never drink again. So, yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, the science, your commitment, expert coaching, the community, and the accountability that is built in there, not just from the individual coaches, but from the other participants, right?
Yeah, because of that community, you don't want to be the one that, breaks it and has a drink and has to come back and admit that. And a few people did. I think of the program that you call it a reset. If somebody does make a mistake and, the coaches warmly welcome them back, you get one chance at that. Community welcomed them back and we all surrounded them. And I know several of those people that did have a drink during the program, but then haven't had one since. Right. So they were struggling with that. But that community really is strong. I mean, you don't want to have to get on a call and tell everybody that you're the one that broke the chain because we're stronger together. We talked about that a lot, too, that if nobody breaks, it makes it a stronger bond. And that continues, well after the program, too.
Yeah. Anecdotally, I can share that having been coaching folks since 2015, there is an interesting phenomena that I've noticed. And that is that those few people, because it is rare that people do drink during the 90 days on their first attempt, but those who do, that then creates long-term breakthrough. So when they have the reset, they go back and then they go again, then those folks are consistently alcohol-free for many, many months, years, etc. Rather than it breaking them, it actually is like, oh, okay, I needed this to really get it. And now they're good to go. So that does happen. It happens rarely, but it's great that it doesn't turn into, I failed, I'm no good, I just got to surrender this for the rest of my life, because that's not what happens. They end up making it stick from that point on.
Yeah, I would agree. And, I'm glad that I tried control a couple of times because now I don't have to ever wonder again whether or not I should try drinking again. And the other big thing that I learned, so the first time that I did this in the other program, I still had alcohol up on a pedestal. Like I'd walk into a bar and see it all lit up and glamorized and think, man, I'm missing out on that. And what I learned from you in the program, I don't look at it anymore that way. I walk in and I look at it and think, that's a bunch of stuff that's really bad for me, and I don't want it in my life. And that was a totally different mind shift too. I don't have that mindset any longer of, I wish I could drink. I don't look at people that can drink moderately and think, oh, I wish I was one of them. I just don't want it in my life anymore. So that was a total mind shift that I learned through Project 90 that I hadn't previously, and a really major breakthrough for me.
Amazing. Well, it sounds like you had a few breakthroughs. Congratulations. I really do acknowledge you. And I also want to say thank you, Steve, as well, because you were always very supportive of the other participants. And you did show up, like you said, you were there 3-4 times a week, not just receiving the coaching, but also giving the coaching. And when I say giving the coaching, I don't mean giving coaching in terms of the science behind alcohol, but sharing candidly what was going on in your life and sharing your experiences, because that is coaching. That's supporting other people and giving them permission to be able to share candidly about what's going on with them. So again, I want to thank you, acknowledge you, and really celebrate you for your contribution to our community, not just the breakthroughs that you've experienced.
Well, I appreciate that, James. I did try and I was all in. I did try and share what I learned. And like I said, I like to lead and I like to help people. And it was good. It felt good to be able to do that and to be a small part in other people's journeys. I'm 6 months in, so I am still new. I'm convicted, but I also know how challenging this can be. So, being part of this community ongoing is really important to me because I don't ever want to wake up someday and forget what I've learned or think that I can control this beast, because I know I can't, but I know people go 5, 10, 20 years and kind of all of a sudden wake up and think they can. So I do want to share just kind of one other thing, and that is, if you're out there and you are, truly battling, you know it. If you're thinking, if you wake up one day and say, hey, I'm not going to drink today, and you do, or you say, hey, I'm only going to drink on the weekends, but the weekends start on Tuesday or Wednesday, or if you feel like it's just getting the better of you, you probably kind of know it already, and you're probably wondering. And, maybe, I don't identify as an alcoholic. You probably don't identify as one out there. I'm talking to the people that are out there. But, to me, I always look at worst case in my business. Trying something like Project 90 and taking 90 days off, to me, worst case is that at the end of 90 days, you're probably going to feel better and give your body and liver a little bit of a break. At best case, you're going to get an education and make a decision on whether you want this substance in your life going forward. So I would just encourage listeners that if you're thinking or resonating with this at all, then it's probably worth taking a 90-day break and doing it with some education like you get in Project 90. I think you'll be glad that you did if you do that. So I just wanted to share that.
Steve Wilt, 58 from Ohio. Thank you very much for your time. Appreciate you.
Thank you, James.
James Swanwick here again. Thank you so much for listening to the show. I want to send you some free stuff. If you haven't yet got the Alcohol Freedom Formula, then you can get that at alcoholfreelifestyle.com/guide. The YouTube channel is alcoholfreelifestyle.com/YouTube. I put out lots of educational videos on my Instagram page at James Swanwick. You can also find me on TikTok at James Swanwick. If this show has benefited you, I would so appreciate you leaving a review and giving it 5 stars. We have a 5-day no alcohol challenge, a 30-day no alcohol challenge. You can get details over at alcoholfreelifestyle.com. And if you would like to apply to be part of Project 90, which is our flagship process where you get a community, 7 coaching calls per week are available to you, a like-minded community, mostly folks in their 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s, then you are welcome to apply. You can get all the details over at alcoholfreelifestyle.com/project 90, and the details are in the show notes. Thank you again for listening. I will catch you on the next one.